and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
Hello there, beloved Ascension pioneers, and welcome to this very special edition from the Wisdom of the Stars series, which I'm so proud to present yet again. So much information coming through at this time, a lot of processing, a lot of galactic activations again. So as you know, from time to time, I like to produce these more bigger picture videos in terms of what's happening from bigger cosmic levels, our galactic levels, coming as an interplay of energies and integration on this earth plane. So a lot of us, as I've shared this with you before, coming from the star realms, bringing our own sparkles of stellar wisdom into this earth plane at this time. So when I'm going through certain cycles in my own awareness and integration on earth, usually what comes through is that after this new energy comes in, right, it's almost like this light is triggered and something, a new part of us is activated. After that comes physical integration. A lot of releases might happen, denser things happening, you know, kind of being dissolved. After that, a very strong current of galactivation coming through. So this is how it's usually for me. And today was one of such days. So when I have these days, I go on my daily run, and I receive so much information, so many updates, and I'm trying to do my best to synthesize them in a most understandable manner. And today's video will be more advanced knowledge shared. For those of you who've maybe taken my Cosmic Convergence, I don't know, maybe multidimensional ascension course, it's still new, it's still very new, so not a lot of you have taken this course, or galactic, what's it called? Galactic signature course, of course, I made it, right? And that's why maybe you have a deeper understanding of this already in terms of alignment with your soul. So if this will resonate with you somehow, or just take an inkling from it, you don't have to go too much into it, but it will be a lot of information shared through, coming through. So please bear with me and be patient with me as I'm going to try to kind of like put this in an essence form that is kind of understandable to most of you who are tuning into these videos. So it does deal with our personal timelines. As I've shared this with you, we cannot open certain gateways and levels of understanding if our soul is not there yet. So if understanding is not an innate, you know, processing where we are at, it's not a mental thing, it's not an understanding we can acquire mentally. So it's almost like when people say I'm blocked and why can I get this, why can I open this chakra, why can I have this for myself? It's not like that. It just means you're not there yet, you're not ready, you're not at that level of understanding. So let that go, whatever does not kind of feel good with you, because a lot of people, what they tend to do is they tend to overload with information, and a lot of scattered syndromes will come from that because they're not ready to process that through their innate root understanding. So it can cause a lot of confusion and distortion. So just leave that if it somehow doesn't find a space in your heart. For me in my life, everything I've been going through was an initiation. It was a training. I've been in training all my life. So basically, a lot of us who've come here on this planet at this time, we're not walking a specific incarnation as most people who are having these incarnational cycles. What we're having is a direct stellar transfer of our soul infusion. So that's why our memory is still intact, because it didn't have to go through all these veils. It's not as distorted, and that's why we can receive it more directly. And I remember years ago, I met this woman who was psychic, and she told me that I don't go to past lives when I, get this information. I go straight up there. And I've always understood this as my stellar connection in terms of how I've pre-planned myself to come here at this very specific time. So please understand that what I'm sharing comes from levels that are not earthly, although I do know there's a lot of earth masters right now in this planet that are needed as well, because they're bringing more like this completion of earthly cycles. For example, like the certain tribes that have ancient earth wisdom, certain shamans, the grandmothers, all of those beings who have presented us with a great compilation of earthly knowledge, while we, those of us who are more star beings that more carry the frequency of cosmic knowledge, knowledge that comes maybe from other planetary systems. Basically, it's a stellar energy. We're bringing the light of our origin here, and we're kind of integrating all aspects as one. And those of us who are maybe just coming from a different perspective and they're merging. That's what's happening. None of these parts are exclusive. They're all needed in the outplay of this galactic history we're creating together. So when I'm sharing, I'm just doing my part in this grand equation of all. And I'm not saying this is all, but this is my part. It's a very important part. So what's happening at this time, today I will also show you some sketches that I made because I don't have my whiteboard with me. I'm outside of nature. That's where I want to do my recordings. So I took some paper and you know, and I will try to show you those sketches of certain things that are really important for us to understand at this time. So the main thing that's happening right now is today I've had a huge release. There was a feeling of sadness coming and I didn't know what to associate it with. I said, what is this? And immediately I got this information that basically a lot of us are going to the root of the first prime separation that took place. I again will bring you back to the Bible of the New Age, which is the Prism of Lyra book. For me, that's a really amazing book because it guides us back to our star origin, all of us, and it gives us the tools that we need, you know, as understanding how we're integrating ourselves and all our parts back together in diffusion as one, because we've been leaving these parts of us and we didn't want to face them. And at the end of the video I will present a few examples of how we're dealing with this and through this as in our relationships, how our relationships are serving us to meet those aspects of the whole. So when today I had this vision, it reminded me of the deepened awareness that I got after reading this Prism of Lyra, and today it was almost like this knowing that there's a separation that we are feeling into, but it's not just a separation that people are now talking about in terms of, you know, Earth is separating on this density and that density, and some people are moving forward, some people are staying with what they've been co-creating until this point, they're staying with the old template. But this is more of that, the first primal memory of where these fractions began taking place. And I want to tell you this, so from the heart of and mind of God, and I've written it down like this, right? We have the heart and mind of God. That's the first polarization, which is still within unity. We have an essence that when we are of source, which we are all coexisting within the mind and heart of God. But when we wanted to have an experience of what is not to be fully in that fusion, which is a neutralized polarization of unity, we wanted to have these experiences. So from the first primal Lyran essence, so through the Prism of Lyra, it's the gateway of this universal consciousness and expression and form. Before all the other fractions began taking place, there was the first initial fraction. So today I had this memory of, it came through relationships. You know, a lot of times when women meet men, there's almost like this tendency to have that feeling of one aspect is more heart-based, one aspect is more intellectual, more mind-based. So this you can also see as the hemispheres of our brain, the left and the right, the masculine and the feminine, and where different functions are as other expressions of that capacity of a certain brain hemisphere. So what took place is the first fractions, and one fraction said we're going to go we're going to go with the path of the heart, and the other fraction said we're going to go with the path of the logic and reasoning and mind. So from that, other fractions actually took place, and you see there's just more fragments that are coming into essence. So these fractions that were then later co-created through that. So the first three archetypes, and I teach that in my Cosmic Beloved course, how to become our ultimate Cosmic Beloved, how to bring that cosmic understanding back to ourselves, and through our conscious relationships. And you can get that course on my page, Serapina Light. So this is where I teach this. I'm basically not teaching it, I'm bringing back the cosmic awareness to those who are ready to remember, because this is an innate knowing within all of us. It's just that we have a different programming of how much we remember that as an essence. So what to say here is that, you know, the mind and heart of God later become the separation when we wanted to have this experience. And when we, for example, in my relationships, when this was experienced as, you know, we even know it as a mother and father. And a lot of times the role of the mother is to be the caretaker. It's more the feminine principle. So the feminine principle deals more with the feminine essence of creation, which is the heart of creation. And while the masculine is more the seed, it's that the logic, the divine logic. And in truth of the mind and heart of God, they're already one. They're not exclusive, they're both equal. But as we went into the games of playing in our roles and separation, we've created these fractions. And these fractions actually, if you've seen the movie Divergent and Insurgent, in this movie it's very well presented because it's an archetypal understanding of what's really been taking place here. It's because it shows us that there were these divisions that we made because we wanted to keep ourselves in control, and there's still opposing forces that don't want this unity, that are keeping us in control by feeding more of that control, by keeping us separate, by keeping parts of us segmented and fragmented. So these movies that are now coming out, they're not just sci-fi movies, they're actually bringing us an archetypal understanding of what's taking place on a bigger level. The galactic games that are unfolding, this is not just planetary. For a lot of you who've done the work so far on your Earth levels, you're moving into these galactic levels, you understand that already. So what's happening is that there's this innate understanding that wants to come back to us. And because this was our desire, this was the design that we actually have chosen. Now, the sadness that comes with it, as we're kind of mourning that. So my example today was that I had this memory of how in many of my relationships, you know, when the energy leaves you, or we would say when the masculine leaves the feminine, it's actually aspects of us that we remember leaving and saying, you know, I'm going to choose the path of this fraction. So these two split. And the splitting of this created this almost like a sense of no longer being whole within ourselves. Even though one aspect said we're going to explore this realm and the other division went this way, there was still this tendency to fuse, to merge. There's always this longing. So this longing propelled the evolution, and evolution took place in many cycles of the galactic civilizations, and of course playing out as on Earth as a part of that galactic civilization as well. So the thing was that when we have these experiences, or where you feel, for example, in a simple relationship way of the Earth, because Earth is a micro level of how things are unfolding in a bigger macro level. So let's say a relationship tendency would be a man leaves his home and his family every single time to go to work, to, you know, feed the system, to be in the matrix, and the feminine waits, and the feminine is the mother, the nurturer, choosing to stay with the family. Or when you're in a relationship and you love someone, but they continuously to choose to be in the unawakened world, they choose to be in the world of reason and logic, while you're already doing the inner work, you're doing the healing, the wholeness, the heart connection back. But the thing is, this comes as a remembrance that we're not to be fragmented anymore. And a lot of us who've done the work of becoming a master of polarity, we're returning now to show others. The way of our true home is the way to synthesize this back into our true original whole. So if you've experienced this in your relationships, when you grieve someone, when you lose someone, quote unquote, when you leave a relationship, when something ends, what you're really sometimes presented with is a story playing out in bigger levels. Let's say you would be grieving that aspect that that person brings into the whole that leaves. And what is the true nature of integration is to bring that which we would miss through another, what that other, you know, reminds us of, what they kind of represent to us, and instead of being so desperately in love with them and thinking that they hold the answer to our wholeness, we need to bring those aspects back to us. Because as much as parts of us are keeping hope and faith and optimism that certain souls, for example, would also ascend and choose this path, not every soul at this time is choosing that. And I was presented with this almost like hitting a brick wall of, you know, grieving the aspects that maybe the soul is not going to choose this. And you're not grieving a lot of times. I'm addressing Ascension Pioneers here. And a lot of times we're not grieving that you're not with the person, or that this ended, or something is not the way you've expected it. But you're grieving something on a bigger level, which is an aspect which still chooses to be fragmented, that it wants division, that it wants to be. And like I've said before, we are the merger of worlds. But those worlds we need to merge within ourselves. We cannot force a soul to, you know, coerce, please, into my ways. Please, you know, be the path of spirituality, or be this and that. And the thing is to learn to grieve that, to give that aspect that's playing out on a bigger level a space that you feel that it's coming through something much bigger than you would imagine. But what we're doing is, in this earth, this this minute level, this tinier level, it's just as equally important, because the integration that we're choosing now is happening here as well, because it's happening on all levels simultaneously. It's just that we're not always aware of it with our earth brain and capacity to understand. So what's happening is that when this takes place, a lot of this sadness, this loss, grief, release will be occurring because we remember parts of us that are leaving, that chose to leave in our prime separation, when we were not as fragmented as we are now. And these fragments said we will have these divisions. And please see or try to see the bigger meaning within that movie I recommended to you. It's a very famous movie now, Divergence, Insurgents. There's sequences to the movie, and I think final one is to come next year, I think. So the thing is that there's almost like parts of us who have this awareness already, who have fused back into this greater polarity of unity. We've incepted ourselves here into this reality. We've imagined ourselves here. We've dreamed ourselves into being here. And we've talked about this today with my cosmic friend. And what came out into being is parts that are reminding other parts of what's really taking place. So we can not just heal as humans, but heal in these various timelines. And just to know that a lot of releasing that's taking place is because a lot of the bigger picture, a lot of the bigger things are unfolding simultaneously at the same time. And for us to have a capacity to understand, we will have an innate knowing of how to bring those fractions back to the mind and heart of God. Sorry, these are not the best, but the mind and heart of God is when the polarity is neutralized, when you have the essence of wholeness within you at all times. It's all whole. And you know that this is, for example, represented as certain star beings that went completely more into the mental realm, and other beings and other races explored more the heart realms or the inner realms. And the Prism of Lyra, you can read all about that. So basically, what we want is to bring those aspects that maybe before we denied or didn't want to fully see back into this wholeness. I'll talk about this in the last part of the video, but I want to go now into explaining a little bit of our mission and our star origin to embrace it even more deeply. Okay, so as I've shared with you, this is very important for those of you who feel that you're not just here having an incarnation, but you're on a mission. The first thing I want to express before I go to the stellar origin part is I want to explain this, right? I want to explain what I've been drawing here. So a lot of us are getting lost and confused, and when people are asking about their purpose and what they're supposed to be doing, is there's still not an understanding of this hierarchy of the difference between what I've been writing here, the core purpose, the life mission, and the assignments, the different assignments we might be having. I've drew here because the core purpose is who we are as our birth itself. I call this the core creation self. And I explain this in many of my courses. So if you want to go deeper, check into my courses on Serapina Light, because I do explain this more deeply there. So you can imagine this as this dot, the eternal spot, that's something in your prime nature that you always are. And for me, I'm going to explain with my own examples is how Spirit presented me with my own variation of creation is to bring the light of illumination into the worlds of creation. And I'm always doing that, no matter what kind of assignment I'm in, whatever I am, what's my life mission, where whatever star system, this is my primal nature of how my uniqueness exists in creation. So the life mission is the knowing of something you're meant to fulfill, to become self-fulfilled in this lifetime. It will include many different things, the assignments we have. And the life mission, for me, for example, is to, this what I've created within Ascension Pioneers and Serapina Light, and is to guide stellar beings who are Ascension Pioneers, basically, and to guide them to come back to their divine remembrance so they can have their purpose intact, so they can remember, they can speeden up their process of what's needed, and to kind of lead the way of physical ascension. So that's my life mission. How I do it, there's going to be many different things. So the assignment part, you see, that's what comes around the circle, which is the spirit part of your life mission. And then all these rays of different energies, different templates we will co-create as we're partnering up with our own soul when we become soul infused, not driven by our perceived ego desire. So one example would be, in my life scenario, I didn't know about any of this. So the first part of my life, I thought I'm just, a casual, normal soul living this life, learning my experiences up until the point when I was forcefully awakened. It was quite forcefully for me. It just needed to happen. And all those things that people would call bad, started to happen. I started getting more sick, and I was in a very manipulated relationship at that time. That was just the mirror I needed at that time to step up and to start remembering, so that I could go through this scenario in order to remember bigger things. And the more I unlocked, the more I received. It always came in divine timing for me. It wasn't like all of a sudden, because then our body would just go off as a fuse. So it's always intact in what we need. That means assignments come and go, but the life mission is. So the life mission is something that's invariable. It doesn't change. It's always what it is. It's your essence that, in a unique way, it translates itself into this physical form. So what this means is that it will be so primal to you that it will be your soul's passion. But the assignments here will be different tasks, and you will receive your assignment each time. It will be something new, and you will know you need to stick with it, because the feeling will just be, this is where my life force is, this is where I need to go. And for example, an assignment is not just something that will be so grandiose, like, create this great webpage portal for all star seeds or something like that. It can be as a simple thing like you being a divine companion to someone. It might be having a certain relationship at a certain time, because this was a part of your agreement for them and for you. And this might mean it can last up to 1 month maybe only, or maybe it will be just 2 weeks or whatever it is, but it will be your assignment for that time being, and you will know it. You'll need to stick with it, although you will know it's not your final destination. This is not something you will stay with forever, and it's will have its end period, it will have its limited time restraints, and you will feel that, and still you'll need to stick with it. And until you'll get awesome confirmations. The life force will flow, there will be a force of abundance, things will flow. But when your assignment to that level will be complete, you'll be asked once again to release it, to move to your next assignment. And all of these assignments are a part of our training as well. So this is very important to know for each being who knows and recognizes themselves, that they're not just living a normal incarnation, which is no different, but it's just different because you feel a sense of needing to do something. And every starseed that did incarnate through the wheel of karma, they had this innate desire to know more about themselves, what they're really supposed to be doing, rather than just thinking they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. And it feels very passionate and driven. And although I know a lot of beings were still they were still very confused about, what they're supposed to do here. And because maybe some of them got too much information too early, and they were confused with a lot of movements like the New Age and all of that, and they didn't find their way. But what also took place is, if you've read some of Dolores Cannon books, is why there was such an increased number of beings from, other realms, beings with cosmic awareness, is because not just Earth was in trouble and Earth was going through its transitional shift, but also because a lot of star beings who came here early as the predecessors, as those who came here maybe to give birth to those who come more in numbers and larger numbers, a lot of them were kind of sedating themselves, or they wanted to escape this reality. It was too much for them. They couldn't handle it because the energy wasn't yet as opened and as pure as we can feel it now. It wasn't that easy. So for the first few candidates, it was very challenging, and because a lot of them were kind of losing themselves in this reality, and they were wandering off and they couldn't find their way back, there was, there's no trial and error in terms of there's a mistake, or we have sometimes this feeling like, mission failure, what if the mission fails? And we all have it somewhere in our galactic imprint. There's the sense of, what if the mission fails? But in true nature of our cosmic heritage, there's this innate knowing that everything in creation is just cycles and expansion and trials, and there's infinite amount of these trials. So when something doesn't work, you send new allegiance, a new level of light, a new light new light absorption comes. So what took place is a lot of us came also to show those who maybe kind of got a little stuck or a little forgotten of what they're really supposed to be doing. And we came here and we said, we're going to remind our brothers and sisters. And that's why a lot of beings are doing this work and sharing this information, just to remind others. It's as simple as that. No one is healing anyone. No one is saying, I'm going to save you, because all this is already encoded. and the starseed. It's just that sometimes, because they were not knowing how to cope with this reality, they've created mechanisms of escapism and denial. So they kind of forgot about their mission. So when the starseed is not doing their mission, they feel very depressed. And a lot of these beings who felt these waves of depression, they didn't understand what they're really here for anyway. So this is all basic information. But now I want to move to something more expanded, which is to explain a little bit about the stellar origin and how do we trace it back in a very simple manner, because it's a natural process, so that we understand what we're actually doing here. And then I want to give you some of the examples through relationships. So now I want to take us to the legacy from the stars, which is basically, I want to talk a little bit more on the stellar origin. I'm frequently asked about this question. You know, people say, oh, you know, what's my star origin? Or how do I connect to these prime creation essences of who I am and these roles I've been playing and all of that? And I usually tell everyone that it's more important to receive the essence that comes from the titles that we perceive, but when it's really coming from the soul, when it's of the soul, this memory, the road we've traveled, it's going to happen from, you know, from that wide perspective. It's going to continue to be more narrowed down, because this is how it is. And I explained this through the out-breath of creation, when all life was sang into being. And from that prime spot, and I'm going to show you the sketch very soon, stay patient. From this prime spot, it's like all life expanded from. And for us here as humans, on the human level, trying to remember back this origin of, you know, tracing it back in a way. It's almost like this metaphor which I gave you once with the waterfall. When you trace back the wide flow of the water back to its narrowest point, like where's the spring of the water? Where's the mountain spring? And in the end, what we will see, because I'm observing these waters here as the river here by next to me, and I'm always shown there's many different springs coming together, becoming one body of water. So basically this is what's happening, the vertical, the horizontal aspects aligning. And these springs are the different origins where we kind of come from, but we're all kind of in this path of Ascension Pioneers. We're becoming one body of water with one synthesized purpose of going as one with the ascension of the planet through the understanding of the ascension that is more multidimensional than we just perceive it right now in this time and space. So if you want to know more about that, I teach this, all of this on a greater perspective level in my course called the Multidimensional Ascension. It also comes together with the Cosmic Beloved course, so you can get a package of both. That's more available to those who want to go even deeper and want to synthesize that as one essence. But I want to say that tracing back the soul lineage, it needs to occur for us naturally, because imagine receiving something mentally and then you're kind of obsessing over something and it's just not really helping you. It's not helping your upbringing. It's not helping how you are serving yourself and all life, but what's creating just more confusion. So for us to build a template of the natural course of, you know, events for us, showing us, presenting us with the kind of information we need, but then also that the vertical knowledge comes through, we need first the template of understanding the basic creation principles. And if you're one of those beings who's already watched my Cosmic Convergence course, where these 5 video series explain these things more in depth, these principles of creation, and you know, I've kind of synthesized all of my automatic writing and all the knowledge that I've been gathering through years and years of my own divine remembrance to make it available for those of you, so you don't have to waste so much time that I did and all of that, because I used to be alone for many years, just focused on that. But this was my path of service. So I want to give you this basic template of understanding how we're tracing back the lineage. Is basically we're activating our soul on these levels to its prime originated core. And as we go along, is feeling ourselves as these different essences. For example, people say, my fairy self, my elven self, my mermaid self, all of these different selves, my star self, my ET self. There's just memories coming back forth. But what we want to do is, I'm being shown we're synthesizing these, because we're becoming an ascended being that knows how to synthesize that in one unified essence, so that you have at the same time the expansion, the width, but also the narrowness of the focus of your soul origin. So the stellar origin here is shown through 7 main levels, which first I will read and then I'll show you the sketch again because it's hard for me to read like this. So we're tracing our soul lineage like this. So if we find ourselves here as on the level of being a human and we start to awaken, this is where the consciousness can wake up to the fact of becoming more galactic and more universal and their human level. This is what we're doing now. And there's many different races of humanness, but to its various degrees that we would call them star beings, different ETs, and then it goes way back to elven and angelic and back to prime source. So the first level is of course all that is, but you can see here the expanded notion of everything. It's a constant pulsating force of all life. So there's this eternal dot space in the middle and a circle of spirit around it, and then things are through the breath of creation coming out. So the angelic level, which is here at the top, and all the essences which I've counted are 7. So you have the angelic, which are the God essences. They're just essences of being the messengers of Source. They're essences of Source, the first extensions. In the book of Silmarillion by Tolkien, this is expressed through very much graceful interpretation of the first creation forces called the Ainurs. So, and they later become what are they later called? Valars. Yeah, later they become the Valars. So this is just the same as the angelic essences that later become the elven. And I'm going to explain to you how these levels are creating in the worlds of creation, because creation exists for us to explore and expand. So these essences then, the elven are called the luminaries. Later they fraction out in becoming different star beings. Then we have the human, which is us, the human template, which is becoming more and more evolved, of course, as we know it. Then we have the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the rock mineral destruction kingdom, which is the structure to provide the life of matter. And also the mineral, as you know it in terms of crystals, it's also crystals here. This is the vital essence, is the crystalline essence, is how all information travels through different worlds of density and different dimensions. It travels through the nature of the crystalline structure. So tracing our soul lineage would be that once we start to wake up, right, and these prime levels of just being human, just having our different, you know, the various things that we're doing as humans, cohabiting, going to work, meeting other people, partying, meeting more about life, going to nature. As this completes in a way for us, when we start to activate more and more potential, more and more awakening life force within us, we'll start to probably remember not just our past lives as humans, but even in the books of the lore, she says, you know, certain beings will go back to their past lives, or maybe just to different areas in this life that they've had, like for example in the area of their childhood. And they're not always shown to go deeper because maybe they're not ready yet to have that conscious and be brought to their conscious. But what takes place is when you are ready, you're going to start to remember not just your past lifetimes, but also past parallel lifetimes in different worlds, different realities. We may know this as star beings. If this is, it can go further. If your soul is activated to that level, you can remember even more. But this isn't established for all beings because not all souls have been developing through that stage yet. So there's a potential of all of these levels that coexist within all. Some people call this the 7 super universes. It has many different names, but some people call it the 7 kingdoms, the 7 angels, 7 angles. I don't know. There's many different names in many different books, literature. I didn't read any of that. I just create from my own template of my I am, which is coming from my elven, the luminary understanding. This is where this comes from, because the elven is the understanding of how the principles of life we need to be carried through in order for life in creation to have structure, to have a certain template, because it's not that there's rules in terms of how we know them on earth as rules that are superimposed upon us, but rules that are governed by the divine logic, the divine decrees. So when we move now back, I'm going to explain this to you from the first level, that from all that is, expand the first primaries. And we all know about the three main graces, right? Love, wisdom, power, which we also, as we're shifting, the graces are always also shifting in their subsequences. Like we also have the essence of joy, abundance, and I think it's courage, things like that, okay? It's just, it depends upon what we are moving into in a different level as into those 3 primaries. So remember, there's one, the two within one, which is the polarized unity, create the third energy, that's the triangulation. And that triangulation creates, triangle, angel, right? That creates the angelic essence. So these are the God essences that are formless. They're basically essences that can travel beyond time, space, and they're the essences, and that's why they can travel, and that's why we can have angelic connections. And for example, if you have your own angelic memory awaken, and this level of your soul is already activated, you've lived through it, you've known yourself on those levels, a part of your essence did participate in those, you have that understanding, right? Awakened, it's not just dormant, but it's awake within you. You might have also yourself these moments when you can be simultaneous to different, as an essence, travel through an angelic way. Or there might be, for you, as you're meeting relationships, they might mirror to you back your angelic self. And I've had this one connection that I call my mystic angel connection, because we could meet up in timeless spaces. We've kind of had our shared dreams, and we could have that the way I didn't have with other beings, for example. And I recognize that as an angelic aspect within me that's through a relationship recognized like this way. So the elven, the luminaries, then, as I go like this, further and further down, it creates descension, right? Descension means that the further and further fragmentation, that's what it means. So the elven, the luminaries are then those who know how to work and channel directly these God essences. Like, remember in Silmarillion, it's so hard to pronounce, by the way. I've always had difficulties pronouncing this. They are the primary forces of Source. They're singing the songs of creation, like angels, right? We always see them singing, and through singing they're creating. They're receiving the divine logic input, what the great avatar of all kind of puts in, and they're creating through their own co-creation through it, because it's already varied. It's already a variation of creation here as the triangulation begins. So then the elven, the luminaries, are those beings who know how to directly translate that and create that and begin the worlds of seeding the art of creation. But it's still more on the ethereal or the essence level. The star beings are then those who take those principles. They're ruled by those principles. That's why a lot of times in the books of Dolores they talk about different councils of light that give them orders. They say, we're given these orders of, we know what the assignments are. So these star beings are living out those different realities in terms of what they're assigned to, what they're choosing, and there might be many different things, but they have a more galactic awareness usually than what we had here still as a human race. The whole point being was that the human once did have that activation, that it does become a member of the galactic family, or what to call it. So when this takes place, the star beings, that level of us as our star self, we might remember ourselves being a star person, or something like that. Memories like that, or people who are having strong affinities to working with technologies that are not earth-based. They weren't here before, but they have a memory, and they just don't maybe know how to implement it on the earthly realm. But they're slowly working towards that. And what I'm talking about here is that these all coexist. Like I said, it's about unification. But when you choose your purpose, life mission on this planet, you will filter through. It will be very specific. That's why a lot of people will resonate more with the purpose of being a star being. And they'll say, I'm more about different technologies, mind technologies, spiritual technologies, this is what I'm choosing, or, metaphysics, things like that. The elven, the luminaries, because I've chosen this to be my specific in this lifetime, my most focal point is because I decided to work with nature and share about the nature of creation principles. So this is the aspect that I most strongly, predominantly even put it out there. And people perceive you through that aspect because it's so strong within you. It's magnetically coming out there from you. It's a natural thing. It's not something you're making up, because it is who you are. That's why you radiate it outwardly and emanating it with all your life force. So then the star beings also, part of their missions was to assist the human project, which was almost like the bridge between the consciousness of the lowest aspect of the animal, and to make it from it to become luminary beings. So that's what the template, when the human project began, when you know it as the Homo sapiens, right, at the first initial stages, before it was like that, we had very hairy beings. When you read, this is exactly in this book, I think it's in this book, I read it here, when the being was just like, I'm growling, I'm not even making speech, I'm just saying work, yeah, and I'm poking at animals and testing them, and just testing the ground, how it is to live this way. So these were these initial how how to call it, not experiments in a way, yeah, in a way, experiments with life here is to bridge life between, from the animalistic consciousness to a higher evolving human, because this is always kind of like a play of how life is ascending from one template and evolving to another. So then you have the animal, the plant, and the rock, the mineral, and I won't go into that into detail. But the point being is that for example, even beings who are very strongly connected with the crystalline realm, and they're working a lot with crystals, they have to have a lot of their focus here, although they are human, right? They're not crystal. But the crystals themselves, they also have in this, you know, in the scheme of the whole, they have a purpose. So the variation of creation that's meant to be a crystal and do its own fulfillment, it also has its mission, it also has its self-fulfillment. We just don't understand it as humans, because if it doesn't walk and talk like us, it's not human, then how can it have a mission? So it's just different aspects, it's different fractions. So when we are remembering and people are asking, which fraction am I? It's not like that. It's not so fragmented. It's more about the essences you're bringing here. There will be a part of your upbringing as well, what you like, your attributes. This will be very strongly already expressed within you as a star seed, or how to call it. I don't like these terms so much, but I'm using them for the lack of a better word. And the thing is that it's going to come very natural to you. You know, you will start melding into these aspects. So when I remember when I moved here to these mountains, my elven aspects were very much evolving at that time. And I even began the elven singing, the expression, everything, how I speak, my speech. Not now, because I have to say it fast, right? So I can put it in this sequence in the video. But my speech in terms of how I am when I'm in just my presence, just doing my thing, things changed for me. I changed the way I was, because more of that essence was evolving through me, was coming through me as a human. So what's happening now is that the human is becoming the blend in of those essences. When people talk about angel humans, they say, angelic human, are you an angelic human? Is that various prototypes of that first primal prism of Lyra, again going back to the book, the first humans, the pure human DNA, we're actually almost like experiments of this being brought forth, so that the human is a shining chalice for the light of transparency, for the light of truth, for the light of illumination. And again, within this project, it's a common, remember the river is wide from all these different streams coming in, comes an essence of what we're doing as a collective of unified force, of, you know, sacred brotherhood, of the white brotherhood of unity. But within it, there will be these fractions that say, I'm doing it from this perspective, I'm doing it from this angle, and that is why you will feel certain essences within you more expressed. And that's why people say, I resonate more with the star being, because they're channeling forth, they're utilizing and facilitating that essence as they're walking their life purpose and the different assignments within it they might be having. So I hope this explains some of the still, you know, delusions people have about this, because people see something and they say, wow, I'm from this planet, this is my whole planet, so I must be a Venusian. The planetary systems are certain templates of how these essences can be expressed, right? That's all they are. They're prototypes. They're different schools of training, and each one has a specific tone to it, like specific color even. When we were born through our stellar gateways, it's almost like we talk about the 7 basic rays, the first primary 7 rays, and then they expanded and became more. But those first primaries can be related to the colors that certain nebulas are emanating out. And it's all connected, so the ethereal becomes the physical. It's all how it is. So to understand the nature of creation comes from this level. Like I've said, the elven, the luminaries. We know, we carry the essence of understanding. And I remember years back, there's this girl who started her awakening, and we met. And she said, I need to channel something for you. It's just coming through. And I said, okay, just channel it, whatever. I always take in everything. I'm humble about that. I never negate something. Just tune it in, and I feel how it feels for me. And she said, wow, you elven beings, you have such a huge responsibility on this planet, the forces you're working with, and with the nature elementals and all of that, how you're governing the energy, how you're directing it. And that's when I talk about the creation pillars. I talk about the power souls, and these souls have the understanding of creation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to hold that position. And for us, sometimes it's enough to just be, and we'll create a lot of ripples of just energy moving out, unknowingly, unwillingly. I still don't know half of these things. I just know how they are because I'm being shown that. And because sometimes I will get confirmation as well in my own way, but I'll never see the whole picture, because It's still how it is on our human level. So for you to constantly ask yourself these questions, I believe it's more about how are we synthesizing through ourselves all these aspects. Remember, it all comes back to that first, I talk about these fragments, but her first, the heart and mind of God. Before that first separation, when one fraction went one way, the other is going the other way. And what we can do, like I said, through our conscious relationships, and this is going to be the last thing I want to talk about, we can bring that back. We can bring that fusion back through our own selves. So I want to talk about this so very much. So as I've said, I want to focus a little more on the aspect of our relationships and how they can be our pathway almost to home, to bridging the gaps between these two first assets of separation. So these two fractions that went into mental and then one into the heart. And how can we fuse them together through love, through understanding? Because a lot of times in our relationships, as I've said, we can notice this dynamic playing out when one is choosing this path and another one is not. Or one is completely in the technological, more the scientific based approach, and they're not embracing the heart, and the other one maybe just the heart and not embracing that. The fusion is in both aspects becoming one, yes, yet again, becoming one. So how can we do this work? I know that a lot of times in our relationships, it happens for me as well, there can be almost like this longing for another soul to shift with us, to shift into this path of unity and becoming an integral whole, a sovereign being. When they know all aspects as one, they can embody them. Because once you have a wisdom about it, what can follow is the embodiment. So instead of this longing and this desire for others to shift with us, because they do have their own timeline, and we do know that, and yet the soul sometimes still has this desire or the need or the drive to kind of assist as many as possible, but we're not to take that as a process that is still not natural. Because there can be grieving, there can be a sense of loss, there can be a sense of hope. You're hoping or ideally hoping someone would shift. And there's a lot of people who are in relationships or even marriages that are hoping for the other to shift. Instead of recognizing how is that for them playing out as another mirror of what part of them wants to return to them. I'm going to give you one example. If you're with someone, maybe you have a relationship, I've had a relationship that was purely vertical. Someone was more in the vertical state. And the essence and the message for me was, how can I make love? How can I embrace that aspect of me? If you read the book of Prism of Lyra, that goes back to the Vegan society and culture and the stellar origin. And when we embrace this aspect of ourselves that another might show us in relationship, what we're doing is that longing of someone to shift is basically gonna be balanced out the moment you do, the moment you integrate that aspect of you. So I was shown in my own path, and this is written about here in this book, that we need to become a wholly integrated being. We're doing it on the human level as well, although we might have aspects of already done this as your otherworldly selves. But we're doing it here now. Like I've said, we're becoming masters of Earth as well, through the knowledge of the cosmic returning back here and mastering it in the integrated aspect. So let's say you might have a relationship with someone who's purely physical. You don't see any higher connection, and yet you're drawn. There's magnetism, there's chemistry on the physical level. And although you might have judgment about it, well, that's just physical, that's not my path, I'm so spiritual, why would I choose this? There's still an aspect of that which needs to be embraced. How do I make love to the aspect of me which is about the human pleasure, the earthly pleasure, embracing the earthly desires, not making it the whole experience is all there is, because that's the thing, that's the difference between an integration of this becoming a fusion or thinking that's the only part, because a lot of souls are just choosing one aspect and they're just pursuing that, and it's an ongoing theme and that's all they're sticking with, and that's the difference. But when we integrate that aspect, when we make love to it, when we embrace that aspect solemnly, that longing for another to shift, that longing to fix them, to shift them, to change them, to be like a source of inspiration for them, it will shift, that desire will shift. Or sometimes people are trying to heal other people's addictions because they have this tendency to save, to rescue, to mother, instead of becoming a triangulation of mother, father, and the divine child within us. In my Cosmic Beloved video, I talk about the three main essences that need to fuse and how this is a prototype within these stellar origins. So please take the course if you're called. It needs to be calling, because again, this is a more advanced knowledge. It's not at this time maybe for everyone. It's not going to be, important and vital for everyone. But there's a knowing of that as something that wants to come and be expressed through you in your reality. So let's say maybe someone comes and they're playing out with you this scenario of Orion, this Orion, which was manipulation, control, governance. Sometimes this is, can come out as the man who wants to manipulate the woman, or the other way around. That's just one aspect. And you're persisting in it because you're resisting it, because you're saying, oh, this is disgusting, yuck, this is so low, who does that? And when people say cut someone out of your life, we have to ask ourselves truly and honestly, what aspect of us are we cutting away from? Like the prototype of the Greys who've cut out their emotion, and that's what they became. And they became so instrumental and robotic. They needed to take some of the DNA from other races, which primarily was us, so they could create a new future-based template for a new genome. So basically what takes place is every single time we cut people out of our lives, instead of looking into what we first need to integrate, we're cutting that aspect of us away. So in the Cosmic Beloved course, I teach about this loop that goes from your prime awakening to your cosmic self, but then making a loop back to Earth, because you need to claim your Earth root mastery for the cosmic to really be rooted into the earthly template. So you can become a cosmic master, but of Earth. This is an advanced work, but I feel there's a lot of beings who are already called to that, or in the future they will be called. There's a lot of young ones now, young generation people, even writing to me. And they're awakening so very fast that they'll go very quickly through those stages. For them, it's not going to take longer than it was maybe for our parents or us, solemnly, the way it was for us. But what I'm saying is every aspect that comes to us through every relationship is a gateway further home. And so that these fractions are there for kind of like becoming whole. And remember, if you did see the movie Divergent, Insurgent, I don't know, and the third one, how it's called. But in the end, they tear down the wall, and once they tear down the wall, some people don't want to even go through it. They're scared to see what's on the other side, and this is what's happening now. The walls between these realities are being torn. It's like the Tower card in Tarot. You don't know what's taking place after, but things are falling down. People are, running and jumping out of the burning building, and everything's on fire. And the thing is, like, when we jump, we can either fall because of that fear, or we can fly, and we can create this new paradigm. And this is what we're doing now, because there is no path into unity without integration of integrity of all. So to become a being of full integrity, we're going to meet all those aspects of us. And I teach that in my course, because I want people to be fully responsible for what's truly taking place. It's not just you perceiving some person as your ultimate and doing no work for it. It's like the template for the beloved has been set, but we need to do the work. So if we were not fully aware of that yet, and we've had these different partnerships showing us these levels, and I've had, when I went through all of mine, how Spirit showed me, this one was working through the Orion crab, this one was working through the vegan, just the vertical, this one was working through the earthly, are you saving other humans, what's happening? All this needed to be looked into, because a lot of us are doing this work on a greater level. And by doing it here within ourselves, because we are the vessel, we are the chalice for this work, we are the sacred beings who are doing that first. What happens is people don't understand, because they think, okay, I do this, then I'm all alone in this, then what happens? What did I do just for me? How is this of service? Because we can't understand as humans. Imagine the scenario when you've completed something, right? And maybe at first you were mocked, maybe at school, or someone had a genius idea, and first they were mocked for it. They were like, haha, what is this weirdo, But then it took, it's like something happened, and a cycle was, maybe something happened with the forward technology, and all of a sudden people were at desperate measures, and they needed to use that. So sometimes people need that, like knock, knock. And when this will be and come intact and come into play, it will have a meaning, it will have value. And that first stage we're completing now, which is the complete dissolution of that, and really setting ourselves free and coming through the wall and not yet knowing what's there on the other side, but feeling we've done this work. And it's almost what it feels like for some of you. It's how it feels for me. When you've had an end of graduation, maybe at the grade school, maybe at the high school or college, after every period of that celebration, you've like, oh, I've celebrated with honors, I've graduated with honors. There was a feeling like we've graduated, because on each level we do graduate. we do kind of master a new level, and there's a culmination, completion, and for a lot of us it's happening now, for me personally as well. And afterwards, you know, the party is like done, people go home, you know, what's left over is a little trash, you know, we have a memory, wow, the party was awesome, it was great. But you feel like this void, and people go their own ways, you know, or after every end of the holiday, we had summer holidays when we were young and we were people, and then this ended, and there was this period before school began again, was this void. Like, wow, now what? You know, it feels a little void. It was so good to graduate, but now what? So this is how this feels like. And that's why I really encourage you to grieve over the process of not just losing something, but also when we walk into something new, when we don't yet know what's there, we also sometimes need that downtown. And sometimes it's like, it's not grieving like it's sadness. It's not the same way anymore. It's not coming from attachment or addiction. It's coming from a new space. It's coming from a space of, wow, this was a long path. It was weary. I was tired. There was so much going on. And give yourself the space to mourn over that. Not mourn like, oh, I'm in darkness now. You know, my life is over. I'm thinking more in terms of just sit with your soul and allow yourself to feel through every hardship you had to go through to earn your mastery. Every single thing you ever went through, you know, every cycle. Wow. And then acknowledge yourself, but also allow yourself to feel sad over what's leaving you. Because although you know better things are yet to come, we're still kind of humans in a way. And we're still kind of feeling, wow, this was, you know, nostalgia kicks in. It's good, it's good. It's a part. And then when you allow yourself, you'll see how much quicker the next new hyper chapter of your divine creativity will come. And this is all I wanted to share for today. It was a long chapter, but don't tell me I didn't warn you. So, Wisdom of the Stars coming at you right again. A lot more to share probably, but if you're interested in having a more personal session, I do these beloved sessions when I kind of interact with you in a way that's more designed just for you and unique for your own soul, because these updates and wisdom I share, it's just general for all of us. But I trust that your soul finds a space of resonance for where you are at in your own timeline and embracing it in full perfection and completion. So I know that things are shifting because I get a lot of emails from people who are simply just acknowledging the work that I do. That means that they are doing their own stuff. Yeah, I'm so proud of all of you. I really am. Thank you for sharing that feedback with me, for going to my webpage, seeing all that I provide that's available for that assistance. That's just out there. It's an eternal presence. It's always there. And thank you for those of you donating, supporting. I really appreciate the energy exchange. And as always, so much love, wisdom, and power from our Alps. Greeting you with so much love and the luminary presence of my heart. And take care for now. See you soon. Bye.